Okay, welcome everyone to our ad hoc budget advisory committee meeting this evening. We will start the evening off with a land acknowledgement. Councillor Fanning, please.
We've gathered in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga peoples. We also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between Indigenous nations before Europeans arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should take only what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant and the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, we are reminded of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community.
Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none. We start off with the first report, which is the capital budget. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. You can mute there. Mute there. Thank you, Chair Armstrong, and welcome to members of the committee and staff to our third meeting of the 2021 municipal budget. First report tonight will review the proposed 2021 capital program. I want to start by thanking all my peers on senior management and managers and supervisors and everyone across the organization for the efforts in preparing a significant capital program for 2021 that recognizes the fiscal and resource challenges that lay ahead in this current COVID-19 environment. Amidst the challenges of COVID-19, several new initiatives have been included based on directions from Council in 2020. New legislative requirements, and a number of health and safety related items. Through the continued efforts in our asset management roadmap and the completion in 2020 of a comprehensive building condition assessment program, a number of facilities now are including additional maintenance programs annually to meet the life cycle requirements of our owned assets. A total of 58 initiatives are proposed within this capital budget, totaling $8.8 million. And it's important to note, this is in addition to capital projects that were carried forward from the 2021 program. The budget before you is funded with $1.9 or $1.5 million in general levy funds, as well as a number of other sources, including $1.38 million in development charges. That further grows our existing deficit within the development charges reserve funds, as we outlined previously. And the following 10-year capital report will delve into that a little deeper. The levy funding represents a reduction of approximately $264,000 in funding directly from the levy to capital. This is critical to ensuring we can balance out some of the operating pressures that lay ahead in next week's operating budget proposal, while still providing adequate funding to sustain a pretty robust capital program. So finally, this year's capital budget does not require any external debt financing or borrowing to move ahead. However, as we note in a subsequent report, the township will be requiring debt financing over the next five to 10 years due to continued projects that lie ahead within service areas, specifically fire services, public works, and parks, recreation, and facility services. So as we have done in all my time here, we generally go through each justification sheet with any comments from members of committee. And as we approve them, we'll move on to the next sheet and ultimately approve the resolution, which we're seeking approval for tonight. So all the department heads are here, and their support staff are also here to attend to any questions from the committee, and we look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. So we'll start with the sheets. The first one is the Joint Service Delivery Review Phase 2. Comments or questions? Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. For some reason, I don't have a raised hand button on here. I'm not sure if maybe Patrick, you could help me out with that, but
I can. If you go and click on reactions, actually everybody should probably do this. Click on reactions. You'll notice that Zoom has moved the raise hands to this menu.
Okay.
Very inconvenient.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Anyway, question about the joint service delivery review. What other service areas are under consideration for coming up? I guess I would be asking the CAO.
Through the chair, we haven't yet nailed down which of the services, but you can know the ones that we have. And just to give the members a bit of an update on that as well, while I've got the mic, is we're just finalizing the work with the consultant, particularly with the region on their part with the library services, and there'll be a presentation report coming in February.
Thank you. Any no further questions? Then we'll carry on to the Prime Minister's Path Stakeholder Consultation Project. Councillor Fenning.
Thank you. Through the chair. I have a request to add some language to talk about the particular priority that Indigenous voices carry in this consultation. And just a small addition that I would request in the description where it says, I'll read the whole phrase. The Prime Minister's Path stakeholder consultation will include a comprehensive, holistic, and inclusive stakeholder engagement with broad community involvement that is respectful of the traditions, culture, rights, and freedoms of all stakeholders taking part, while prioritizing Indigenous voices as part of our commitment to truth and reconciliation. I feel that this is an important addition to specifically call out that we are working to bring reconciliation through this project.
Mr. Kelly. Oh, Ms. Middleholtz.
Thank you, through you, Chair Armstrong. From a staff perspective, including the township's commitment to truth and reconciliation, that to me sounds like a worthy inclusion on this report. However, staff would caution council from including the prioritization of any specific voices as a matter of policy or procedure. As a democratic municipal government, prioritizing the voice of any single group or individual over another, regardless of the merits of the position. This language sets a dangerous precedence for all future external stakeholder consultations with master plans, strategic plans, official plans, etc. Further, it's contradictory to the inclusive language in the scope of work that myself, Councillor Fenning, Councillor Fisher, and the Treasurer all forwarded onto the consultant for the project.
Thank you.
If I may follow up.
Yes.
Thank you. Understand that perspective, but I think that this is a particular case where reconciliation and the recommendations from the Truth and Reconciliation make it a different situation than the average. And while, you know, it's called out that everyone's voices and will be respected in this, it is specifically and more importantly needed to highlight or underscore that particular group in this particular way. So that's why I think that it's not, it doesn't put us at risk for future projects. This is we're talking about truth and reconciliation, and I'd be interested to hear what the rest of the council has to say on it.
Ms. Middleholtz, you had a response?
Certainly, through you, Chair Armstrong, if other members of council wish to deliberate on this, of course. However, from a staff perspective, I would request that this be a consensus, or that it actually be council provide the direction, majority of council, so that we're very clear, because as I said, from a staff perspective, this is setting a precedence. And so it would require a majority of council for that to occur. Thank you.
Councillor Hallman?
Thank you. Through the mayor. While I respect the comments of the clerk in her position, I do support Councillor Fenning's friendly amendment to that. This is a unique situation as it is referencing the calls to truth and reconciliation. This directly reinforces the calls of truth and reconciliation that we are in this instance putting the priority to the voices that need to be heard. And so I'm in support of Councillor Fenning's friendly amendment.
Councillor Gordick?
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Ms. Middleholtz, I'm understanding what you're saying, and I know we're probably putting you on a bit of a, putting you in a bit of a position here to, where would you think that this might set a precedent if this particular issue is specifically with regards to truth and reconciliation? Perhaps if we did another motion some other time with something else that mentions truth and reconciliation, again, the Indigenous reference might be warranted. I'm just wondering where this might be setting a precedent for putting other things when this particular budget item is in the greater KW region.
So through you, Chair Armstrong, specifically with regards to truth and reconciliation, I mean, certainly that could come up at any point in time. But this is not just about truth and reconciliation. It's not just about Indigenous voices. This could be about any group of individuals who could come forward and say, this doesn't affect any other people within the municipality except for me, and only my voice matters. So whenever we set a precedence on different matters, one must think of less favorable examples where people might be trying to find ways of using past practices as loopholes. So whereas we would all like to think that nobody has anything but good intentions, I think we need to know, it would be naive of us to think that that's the only situation that could happen. We are very concerned about the community being divided, and not specifically with regards to this issue. I'm talking about any issues. I'm talking about many different things that we as a municipality will deal with for years to come. So it's not just this matter. It's not just the situation. It's not just truth and reconciliation. It has a far-reaching effect on many different things that members of council as well as staff will be asked to deal with for years to come.
So a follow-up through Mayor Armstrong. However, this particular budget item was put forward as a motion with specific reference to the truth and reconciliation. The omission or inclusion of the word Indigenous kind of goes hand in hand with truth and reconciliation. I don't disagree that we could have somebody come up and say, what about meism? But this particular motion is specifically about truth and reconciliation. I think for me, having it in there, because this is a document that will be kept on record, I'm more concerned that if we don't include it, that somewhere down the line, if something was to happen to this particular budget item and it doesn't get dealt with perhaps this year, not having that reference in there could change the content or context. So I think we need to be clear that this particular project has quite a significant impact, or the reason we're doing it is because of truth and reconciliation. That's one of the main crux for me.
Through you, Chair Armstrong, again, I am not saying that there's anything wrong with including the township's commitment to truth and reconciliation. The staff opposition is more specific to the words prioritizing Indigenous voices. It was that specific language that I was addressing. I think the resolution that was passed in July of 2020 made made it very clear from a council perspective the prioritization of voices with regards to this. But as I said, from a staff perspective, we are recommending that prioritization of any voices not be highlighted.
Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. I'm quite happy with the original wording of it. And as Ms. Middleholtz had explained, I thought it was fairly thorough in the July motion that we had put forward. So I'd be quite happy just leaving it as is.
Councillor Fanning.
Thank you, through the chair. Listening to all of the things, I'm standing by what I'm asking for. The calls to action in the Truth and Reconciliation report, actually, one of them is that we have to specifically prioritize Indigenous voices when we're talking about taking action to bring reconciliation. And so I think that to avoid it is not the right move. And while, you know, I agree that in July the message we sent was very clear. So I think that, you know, it makes sense to continue that clarity here.
Councillor Gerber.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. I believe that the reference to the calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Committee in the budget statement, I mean, if indeed within the calls to action of Truth and Reconciliation calls for that particular phrase, their prioritizing of Indigenous voices, then by including the reference to the calls to the action of the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, we've done that. Just as a matter of procedure, I mean, it's a justification sheet for a budget expenditure. It's not the terms of reference for the consultation. It's not anything that determines the breadth, depth, or scope of the consultation. I think we have made that clear, and perhaps the wording that, I mean, if we want to do any wording, perhaps we want to make sure that we prioritize the inclusion of Indigenous voices, making sure that we're not forgetting Indigenous voices. I think that's what we want to make sure that we're doing, is that we're not overlooking the voices of those people that we may have overlooked their voices in the past. So to me, if we were to say we're going to prioritize the inclusion of Indigenous voices, I think that's the emphasis that we want to make sure that we're telling the Indigenous community and our wider community that we're making sure that we do this, rather than, I think it's unnecessarily provocative to say that we're prioritizing any one voice over the other, even though we understand the sensitivity of the Indigenous voice in this issue and want to make sure that we're making it a priority that their voice is included. So whether we want to, again, procedurally, I don't think what we put in the budget statement affects the consultation and its scope in the least. And I think the fact that we have referenced the calls to action of Truth and Reconciliation Committee, and if indeed they use that language, then that language is included here. And if we wish to note that we're going to prioritize the inclusion of Indigenous voices, I'd be comfortable saying that too.
Okay, so we need some direction here. What are we doing?
May I follow up? Chair Armstrong, may I have
Go
a
ahead.
follow-up?
Yep.
Thank you. Obviously, this requires all of us to be in agreement with each other on the language going forward, and it is absolutely, as a general rule, I don't see making changes to these justification sheets as something I would do on the as a general rule for most items. It's simply with great sensitivity to the challenge that this particular conversation has been for all of us, and a desire not to provoke as Councillor Gerber pointed, but to ensure that we are being respectful, we are walking the walk. And I know that all of you want to be walking that walk with respect. And that's why I brought this forward. I did think about it long and hard before bringing it up.
Well, then I guess what we need to do is have a vote to see whether it's added or not added. All in favor of adding? Councillor Gordon, you wish to comment first?
Sorry, through you, Mayor Armstrong. Perhaps maybe the small change that Councillor Gerber suggested, the inclusion of Indigenous voices with regards, as opposed to prioritizing, maybe that is better off, so that we can at least, I think because these sheets are used by staff, it's easy. I know that we all know what we're supposed to be doing with this project, but again, this is a documentation that goes on our records. And I just want it done right. We've had a long battle over this, and I think that having proper wording, like Councillor Fenning has said, we need to walk the walk and talk the talk. So perhaps a small amendment with Councillor Gerber saying inclusion of Indigenous voices as opposed to prioritizing might be a way to get that through to indicate what we're trying to do with this particular project.
Councillor Gerber?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Yeah, and I think even using the prioritizing the inclusion of. So I think that's the only, that would be the addition, that sort of squares the circle, perhaps, to show that we recognize this is our priority, but we're not necessarily setting some sort of precedent that we're listening to one group over another. Although in this case, we understand that this is a voice that we need to prioritize listening to this voice. I just think it's a way to sort of show that we're emphasizing the need to do that while sort of following Ms. Middleholt's caution. Right. And again, assuming that's within the umbrella of the calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, we've sort of done it. We've sort of done it twice in a way.
So would the word guarantee the voice as well, or as opposed to prioritize? Go ahead,
through you, Mayor Armstrong. I think the concern with the word guarantee would be somebody could say, well, you were going to, you guaranteed my voice would be heard, and if there's disagreement with the final outcome, I mean, we can only guarantee that we're going to take in all the input. I don't, any one person can argue that, we didn't act on their voice. So I like prioritizing the inclusion of rather than guarantee personally.
Well, that's fine then. Councillor Fanning?
I will accept that amendment.
Okay. So
I can, do you want me to, or Don, but I can just say that, yeah, from staff's perspective, we appreciate that adjustment to it. And I'll just simply, obviously, based on direction from this committee, I'll just adjust the project description piece of this budget request form. Dollars stay the same, scope of work for the project that we have with the successful proponent stay the same, but this justification sheet will be amended to include and prioritize the inclusion of Indigenous voices within this process. Good.
very good. Thank you. Councillor Fanning, did you, or Councillor Gordick, I should say, are you wishing to speak again? No. Okay. Okay, all in favor of that? Anybody opposed? Okay, that's carried. Next item is asset management roadmap. No comments or questions. Next is the annual hardware software upgrades. Seeing no comments or questions. Lift station replacement. Next item is modernized records management system. Seeing none. Corporate security program. Councillor Fanning.
Thank you, through you, Chair Armstrong. To the fire chief, sorry, about the records management system. There was a lot of reading in all of this. I'm really intrigued and interested, wondering if when we do eventually get this rolled out, if we might actually get to see it sometime.
Go ahead, Chief.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Yeah, sure. We can, once we get it up and running and functional, we'll hopefully, if COVID allows, we'll certainly welcome some of the councillors to have a look at the system and how it operates and the integration that it'll provide to the department.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? So then we're on to the corporate security program. Any comments or questions? Councillor Gordick.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. This is more just a follow-up because it's a part of the budget. We will be getting a final report as to the work that was done for the admin and also a status report for the rec complex. Will that be coming on the work program for this year?
Mr. Kelly.
Sorry, this is with the corporate security program, correct? Yes. Yeah, what guess maybe you could be a little bit more specific, Councillor Gordick, as to what you're looking for a report. I can say at the outset, public reports on how the township secures our buildings, facilities, and infrastructure generally aren't something that
That's not what I was asking.
Okay, go ahead.
So the final report is just as we had the SEPTED done for the admin complex. Just wondering, is everything complete? Just to be sort of an update as to where we are, if we're all finished with that particular project. And then we knew that there was a SEPTED being done at the rec complex. Just wanting to know if that's going to be reported as to similar to how we had a report before.
Yeah,
So I
I
don't
might,
necessarily need to know the ins and outs, but just if there's actually, if it's been done and the status of it, please.
I'd probably defer to Ms. Jackson for that. I know from our perspective, from the IT perspective, as far as security camera and coverage, this project and continued enhancements will ensure that what's laid out within the SEPTED audit are there. As far as some of the other pieces with landscaping and groundworks that might have been in there, I'm not sure, Ms. Jackson, you can handle that.
Sure. Through the mayor to Councillor Gordick, we have gone through the SEPTED recommendations from the police that were created for the admin castle building. A lot of the interior work has been completed by our director of Castle Kilbride, and she may want to comment on that, on the interior pieces. The security cameras are definitely one aspect of the SEPTED requirements that will finish some of that work up, and hopefully next year our park staff, if they're back to full complement, will be able to finish up the remaining recommendations. We were pretty short staffed this year to finish up all of them. So
Through you, the follow-up, it's not really, it's also, we had requested a SEPTED done for the rec complex, not the admin. I mean, the admin was done prior to this current term of council, but we had asked for a SEPTED to be done at the rec complex itself. I'm just wondering if it's been started. That's basically what I mean by status. I don't need to know, because for security reasons, all of the ins and outs, just the status report as to has it been completed, and some of the recommendations that would be not breaking any security protocols.
Through the mayor, to my knowledge, it has not been completed for the rec center. I don't recall that request during my tenure. Perhaps it was early on in my tenure and a lot happened since then. I don't know if Mr. Dubrick, if I can put him on the spot, if he's aware whether or not a SEPTED audit has been done for the rec complex.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it has been, the police have gone through the building, but I do not believe they've come up with a report yet.
Thank you.
Councillor Fisher.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. I like the idea of the external cameras, especially with the increased activity in the gazebo lately. So it's a great idea.
Councillor Hallman.
Thank you. Through the mayor, Councillor Gorda kind of touched on my questions as well. Just wanted to follow up from the last budget meeting when that was addressed to request that SEPTED audit for the WRC, and just wondering what the status was. So at the appropriate time, can council be circulated on that when the time is right? And then if council can also be circulated on the data as to what was completed for the admin building as we received, that would be great. That's all. Thank you.
Through the mayor, we can certainly follow up with the police with respect to the WRC report. I'm sure they've had a busy season as well this year. And we can follow up with council. I guess I'll speak with the CAO with respect to the method to report that back, because again, we don't necessarily want to show our hand for all SEPTED related changes.
Okay, thank you. And there's no more comments or questions. Next item is the Station 1 asphalt repairs for the fire services. Seeing none. Next is Station 1 bunker gear racks. Okay. Next is the Station 2 asphalt parking lot. Just a thumbs up from Councillor Hallman. Very good. Next is additional funding for replacement of pump 611. Seeing none. Station 1 Rescue 617. Seeing none. SCIBA replacement upgrades. Seeing none. Gas detection equipment. None. Medical training equipment. Additional funding for replacement of thermal imaging equipment. Next into Public Works Operations Facility Needs Study. Rail crossing signage and markings. Councillor Hallman.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Mr. Mullen-Hughes, I received a notification from a resident in Baden that they are inquiring about signage at the corner of Snyder's and Foundry that need to be replaced. Can you comment if that is in our jurisdiction for responsibility and included in this? And can you elaborate on what would actually be included for staff on railway crossings for Wilmot Township?
Through you, Chair Armstrong, Snyder's and Foundry is a regional road intersection, and the rail crossing at that location is considered to be under their jurisdiction. In relation to your second question, maybe you can kind of clarify what you mean there.
Just looking for you to clarify, sorry, through the mayor, just for you to clarify as to what would be included for Wilmot Township staff to be doing with railway crossings. Specifically, what signage are you looking at with this justification?
Through you, Chair Armstrong, this work would be in relation to our 3 crossing locations, so Sandhills Road, Mill Street, and the Wilmot East Hope Road. We undertook a study as required under the federal regulation to look at pavement marking and to look at signage. So in one case, we actually have to look at reducing some speed parameters around the crossing location. So there's some signage for that. There's provision for pavement markings as well, so that we come into compliance with the federal regulation.
Thank you.
So next is the lift station pumps and controller replacements. Seeing none. Additional funding for 2020 dump truck replacements. Next item is the backhoe loader. Next is replace the CCTV lateral camera. Councillor Fenning.
Just a question that's, I suppose, more idle curiosity, wondering how old the camera is that we're replacing.
Go ahead.
Through you, Chair Armstrong, I don't have a particular age for this item. As far as our equipment like this, we would normally try to replace it in between a 5 and 10 year schedule. And I know in my time here in 4 years, we have not replaced this item to date. So I'm not sure of the exact age, but I would expect it would be in that older than 5 and probably less than 10 year age.
Next is infrastructure, master planning, sanitary, and water phases 2 and 3. Next is replace 2011 service vehicle. Next is the servicing study and preliminary design, Baden West. Next is the consolidated linear infrastructure license. Councillor Fanning.
Through the chair, just wondering, there was a note here that the schedule was expedited. What was the original schedule?
Go ahead.
Through you, Chair Armstrong, the original schedule had this particular item for provincial comments in the last 2 years, and we were expecting it to be 2022 implementation. However, we were told in the middle of, or probably in Q3 of last year, 2020, that they were moving up the deadline to the end of 2021.
Thank you. Wilmot Street Construction Phase 2. Councillor Gerber.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair Armstrong, to the Director of Public Works. Just, will this include then some of the, there's still some parking work to be done along Wilmot, right? Adjacent to the Kirkpatrick Park parking lot and things like that. I just wanted to double check that I was in the right neighborhood with that project. This is sort of what we're referring to, and that's online to be done when this is done. Is that correct?
Through you, Chair Armstrong, that is correct. The on-street parking component is part of this phase of construction.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Fanning.
Thank you, through your Chair Armstrong, to the Head of Public Works. I'm and for and to the Sustainability Committee. Particularly excited that there's going to be the electrical charging station included here.
Okay, thank you. Next is the Snyder's Road reconstruction. It's all tied in with the region, so. Councillor Fanning.
Thank you to the chair. I know this project's been delayed a couple times, wondering is it likely that it's going to be delayed again, or do you think we will actually see it going forward this year?
It hasn't been delayed yet, so it's in the works. And it's been interesting. Mr. Molenhughes.
Through you, Chair. I can provide that we are planning, as a regional project committee, we are planning for a tender at some point in the next month or so. We were hopeful to get it out later last year, but there were some delays, obviously, with work programs from ourselves and the region from last year. So we are hopeful that there will be a tender for these phases as noted within the next month or so.
Perfect. Next item is the Knapsinger Road water main. That is the sanitary sewer I&I reduction program. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. So this is the second year of that. Are we making any progress finding out where we're having some issues at all? I guess I'm not sure if it would be directed to Mr. Molyneux.
Mr. Molyneux, go ahead.
Through you, Chair Armstrong. Yes, I would say this is the second year of a reduction program, and I think there's future years as well. We are having certainly more success in the last few years in locating some of our I&I issues, and more specifically, there will be continued work certainly with I&I in general. It is a continuous type of a program, and will need to be a continuous type of a program. So the first couple of years, we will see, if any, we'll see marginal improvements to I&I. I wouldn't say it's going to be anything substantial though at this point, but certainly as we continue on with the program and start to isolate some more of our problem areas and certainly invest in those problem areas, then we'll see some returns at some point, not likely in the next year or two, but certainly in the next, I would say 2 to 5 years.
Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, completely agree with the comments. Oh, I'll just mute you. Comments from Mr. Molyneux. I will note that the summary of 2020 operations that was presented at our last budget meeting did show that our actual sanitary flows to the region were lower than we anticipated for 2020, which we feel is somewhat indicative of the success of the program. As Jeff or Mr. Molyneux mentioned, the savings have been marginal to this point, but we should see them start to ramp up as we continue this investment through the capital program.
Very good. Next item is the Beckdale Trunk Sanitary Sewer E&A and construction. Okay, next is the municipal drain maintenance and capital works. Councillor Gordick.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, to Mr. Molyneux. Just a quick question. I see the justification mentions that this we hadn't been scheduling, so I'm assuming this is going forward. And I might be jumping ahead of the game, but I noticed near the end of our committee reports, there is mention of other scheduling programs to be done annually. But it didn't make reference to drain inspections. I'm wondering if that is something, because these are capital costs, that this would be something that would be included with regards to near the end of our agenda package, where it says that there's going to be things that are scheduled, like the bridges, traffic, HVAC system, et cetera, et cetera. Could the drain inspections be also part of an annual inspection with regards to that?
Go ahead, Mr. Molyneux.
Through you, Chair Armstrong. Yeah, that is the intent, to bring more of a sort of a proactive process, I would say, with municipal drains. What you see in this justification sheet and what you see on the 10-year capital is the result of, we'll say, some improvements to our being proactive in this particular asset area. So I would say the last year or two has been good for information and for inspection and for project planning, and we're certainly looking to continue to improve that. A lot of the work that takes place with drain work and the planning work typically flows through the drainage superintendent. So we do have quite a bit of an overlap process with our drainage superintendent, and so we are continually trying to plan work together, as they would mostly see a lot of the work and correspondence with residents on the front line, and then we would sort of get fed that information for our budget purposes, whether it be for maintenance or for capital needs.
Did you want to comment, Mr. Kelly?
Yep. Again, just to get to the numbers piece of it, the reason we wouldn't need to add an additional program within the operating budget, similar to what we have for bridges and lift stations, et cetera. We do carry already approximately $40,000 a year in our budget for drainage superintendent services, which Jeff spoke to. That is the kind of funding we have in place to have the inspections, to have the work done, to build this capital program. So it's not something that's being omitted.
Councillor Hallman?
Thank you, through the mayor. Just looking to see if there's any, if you can just let me know more about the comments on substantial backlog. What's the result of having a substantial backlog, and where are we looking at to the future with this growing list in our municipality?
Mr. Mullen-Hughes?
Through you, Chair. There's two components, I guess, to this backlog and sort of things we have to work through. And one is from a budget standpoint, that as we work through the maintenance and the capital needs for this particular area, if you look back through previous years and look back through sort of investment in drainage, we've increased it quite a bit in the last few years, and largely as a result of communication with residents, with council members, and with other people of the community who have requested some of the services. So we've looked at increasing the work as much as we can to that point. The other piece is for us is from a staffing perspective, it does become quite cumbersome for us to be able to manage the bulk of the work. And as you can see on this list here, there's quite a few maintenance projects, and those end up being quite involved from a communication standpoint and just from a project and construction standpoint with residents. So those are the two pieces for us that are sort of I guess dictate what we can get done in a year and what we can or we have to plan for future years. So as the note mentions with respect to backlogs, we have I would say a backlog in pretty much any of our infrastructure areas, and certainly from a finance perspective and asset management perspective, we know this. So for us to continue to do the work and to look at some of our priority work, that's what you're going to see in a year, and we'll continue to do that as we chip away at any backlog we have. But we will, I'll be sort of reluctant to say it this way, but we'll always have a backlog in work, and certainly we'll be continuing to work through those.
Thank you. Next item is the surface treatment program. Councillor Fenning.
Through the chair to the Director of Public Works, Mr. Mullenhouse, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what it's going to look like for when these hard surfaces are built for these various road pieces. And I know that Nafziger Road, so our section is just that south piece. And is the regional construction happening on Nafziger all the way to that? Or where is that project ending? Sorry, I've asked a couple of questions in there.
Through you, Chair. The Regions project, I believe you're referencing is at the intersection of Snyder's or Waterloo. So I think there's a roundabout planned at that intersection, and that's the section of Nafziger, I believe, at the focus of their project. Our project is south of Bleems, and it's just the section being converted from gravel to what would be surface treated, so tar and chip road.
Sorry, just for clarification there, if I may, so it's not, the road bed is not going to be widened, it's not going to be changed substantially, it's just going to be hard surfaced, is that correct?
Through you, Chair Armstrong, we actually do conduct our own, we'll call it minor road widening. So we look to, on any of our roads that we convert from gravel to surface treated or hard top roads, we would conduct our own widening of the road surface from a marginal standpoint. So from what you see, or what you would have seen at that road surface 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, we would add about a meter to the depth, or sorry, a meter to the width of the road bed. So I would consider that a very minor widening per se, and that's the extent of what our widenings would consider in these types of works.
Okay, Councillor Gordick.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, to Mr. Mullenhouse. I'm gonna maybe, I don't know how to, why are we doing Knapsinger to triple surface? It may not seem like a lot of money, but being that we're sort of tightening our belts this year, why, when it's a dead end road? And I don't mean to offend anybody that lives on that piece of road, but it's been gravel for a while and it's dead end. So I'm curious as to why we're spending the extra money to triple surface it.
Through you, Chair. As council is aware, there has been a program to convert all of our gravel roads that are certainly within our control and in our jurisdiction to hard top or surface treated road surfaces. This is a project that has been on the list in terms of the project planning to convert for quite a few years. I believe it was on the 10-year, certainly before my time in coming here. And so it's worked its way through the list to be converted. And if you look through the remainder of the 10-year capital, there are other roads that are planned to be converted to a hard surface road. Typically, we try to break up the work a little bit so we don't have all of the conversions happening in 1 year. We have a balance of conversions happening so that it doesn't become too burdensome for our internal resources to make the conversion happen. We typically have a year of work ahead of the actual conversion and the work being done for hard surfacing. Like I said before, we'll be doing road prep or road widening and that type of thing with our own resources. This particular road, as I mentioned, has been on the 10-year capital, and I believe based on the process from last year, this was actually approved in last year's budget, but we had to do a bit of a swap based on timing of work and where we had a conflict with our internal resources. We couldn't actually get the road constructed in time. So this is one that was carried forward from last year's project.
Thank you. I'll let you know, Councillor Gordick, that there was a resident on that section of road that's been asking me about when he was going to be paved since I've been on council, and unfortunately he won't see it because he passed a few years ago.
Just a bit of a follow-up. I guess I'm getting mixed messages through you, through Mayor back to Mr. Mullenhouse. I thought that we weren't paving and trying to keep gravel based on what it does to traffic and other issues and increased salt, plowing, et cetera, et cetera. So I thought that had changed and we weren't paving as much, and we were trying to keep our gravel to keep some of the speed limits down and other things, especially through the rural communities. So again, I'm not necessarily saying not to. I'm just wondering if, as I said, we're triple surfacing this and we're trying to tighten our belts. I'm just wondering, is this a good year for it to be done on Knapsinger? But it's just a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Mullenhouse.
Through you, Chair Armstrong. I'm not aware of any direction from council to change that strategy, and certainly if that was the desire of council as a whole to to look at the surface treatment conversion program, then we could take that direction away and revise the long-term planning for surface treatment. From I guess I'll call it a philosophical perspective, I think it's certainly there's discussion on the merits of maintaining gravel roads and keeping them gravel surfaces for the reasons as you had mentioned. But we would need direction from council to certainly to look at our program and what we've been doing for the past I'm not sure how many years, and certainly somebody else can comment on the length of the program, but the 10-year capital and future plans could be adjusted should it be the desire of council for us to look away from that strategy of converting to hard top roads.
So again, through you, Mayor Armstrong, just to follow up, the reason I guess I'm confused is because of our discussions that we've had with Wilmot East Hope Road. I know that's managed through Perth, but our conversations there with the residents that have had issues for years with dust and everything else, I believe our conversation was that we weren't converting. So that's why I'm confused. That's why. It's not necessarily that there's a change. I just didn't know that that was the conversion. That we were converting because of our just previous discussions with Wilmot East Hope Road and not converting them from gravel. I know that we have a border agreement with Perth and that could be part of their situation, but that's been some of the conversations we've had. So that's where my thought process was coming from.
Through you, Chair, in relation to that particular road, yes, that the basis for that and discussions around maintaining that as a gravel surface in the past have revolved around Perth East and them being the maintaining authority for that particular road. Perth East does not have I guess a program, I would say, like we do in terms of converting their roads to hard surface. So that maybe would have been the context of that conversation, was as the maintenance authority and the operating authority of that road, we would rely on their program. I will say that we've had more discussions in the last 2 years about the merits to converting that hardtop road. However, I can't really confirm or speak to any of those details at this point until we know more information and have a proper boundary agreement with Perth East to speak to some of those items. So.
And thank you, Councillor Hallman.
Thanks for the mayor. I hadn't really reflected upon that until Councillor Berger just brought that up, and I was just quick looking on Google Maps to see how many homes and just kind of processing all of this. So I guess kind of thanks for bringing that to the forefront, Councillor Gordick, and maybe Mr. Mullen-Hughes can just comment. How does it work for prioritizing the surface, like through the journey of this program that's existed, as you said, before you came? How does the prioritization of that work?
Through you, Chair, prioritization typically for conversions would be planned out where we would look at things like traffic volumes and try to look at some of the more higher volume roads. I think that would have been the probably initial stages of the program. In recent years, it really is dictated by our ability to manage the pre-works that are required. So if our labor resource of staff and we're trying to fit it into our operating year, if it's going to work that we can fit in 2 or 3 roads, then we would try to plan for that following with our capital process. I would say where we're at now, we have very few, I'll say it this way, we have very few sections left. It certainly is not unsubstantial, but we have few enough sections left that we're trying to get to the last probably 20 kilometers or 10 kilometers or so of road to convert, and we're kind of at almost a full conversion of our gravel roads to surface treated roads. In terms of prioritization, again, it's like I say, it's going to be related to traffic volumes and very likely related to what we can manage from a staff perspective and getting that pre-work done for conversion.
And a follow-up, please. When it comes to winter maintenance or summer maintenance, with my favorite word, potholes, how does that refer to with management of that with gravel versus the hard top?
Through you, Chair, both types of roads are subject to the maintenance standard. So we would certainly have costs for things like washboarding and re-graveling of road sections. When it comes to general maintenance items, so like you mentioned, potholes, we would include a need for any further we'll call it operating budget for having increased hard surface roads. For us in a year, we'll base it's hard to really base a budget for maintenance purposes unless we've got years previous of data. So our conversion isn't substantial enough that we have to substantially increase our operating budget. We just monitor it over the course of the year and see where some of those numbers come in. But certainly as we convert to a different surface type, there are operational needs that grow as a result of that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next item is the sidewalk repair and replacement program. Councillor Hallman.
Thank you. Happy to see the returned increase or the maintained increase of that in this. I do have questions from a couple of residents within the community. One, if Mr. Mullenhughes can comment on the status of the sidewalk section in Mannheim on Milne Drive, and if those residents can expect to see that those works included in this year's portion of this.
Yeah, through you, Chair. The sidewalk section referenced is certainly within our plans for this year. It was identified as sort of what we'd call a sidewalk hazard from a tripping and from a ponding perspective and needing of improvements. We were hoping to have some of that work done at the end of last year. However, we didn't have everything in place in order for the work to proceed. So we are planning for it to be done this coming year.
Okay, thank you.
Next is the gravel maintenance program. Councillor Hallman.
Thank you. And just another question again to Mr. Mullenhughes, if he can comment on the staff status of the business case involving this project.
Yeah, through you, Chair. In the 2020 budget process, we had included a budget allocation to review. Mostly it was to review material investigation at the pit and to inform our operations as far as moving forward and future activities at the pit. So in reference to that business case, that material investigation that we undertook last year, we were actually delayed in getting some of the results until fourth quarter of last year. So we still are sort of reviewing that information and looking at a plan to move forward. I will say that with hiring delays from last year and with staffing movement in the department, it was difficult to get some of that work planned and done. But we do have a big piece to it, the material investigation and some of that work there. So we are expecting that as long as things sort of stay the same in operations this year, and hopefully we don't have too many other outside delays with managing the pandemic, that hopefully we can have something from a business case perspective or a review perspective for operations at the pit facility, hopefully by the fourth quarter of 21. However, again, I can't really speak to timing in terms of being very rigid in the timing. It may need to still be delayed depending on some of those needs, and to what extent that will be reported back. I don't know to what that will come back to council. That may just be an operational item, and if we need some council direction or we need council involvement, we'll certainly return to council at some point. But yeah, I would expect something in the fourth quarter of 21 if all things go well.
Okay, thank you.
Next is the guardrail and chevron program. Councillor Hallman.
Thanks for the mayor. Mr. Mullenhughes, can you comment on how my ward's looking with some of these projects? I know there are many in Ward 1. Just wondering when council can expect to see that list, or just if you happen to have any that you're just aware of that Ward 1 will be on that list.
through you, Chair, this process will require us to return to council once we have the design completed and have tender in place. So we will have to return to council based on the budget value to award what I would expect to be a contractor to perform the installation works. We have, I think, about roughly 15 locations where we would be looking to install guide rail. So we will certainly be returning to council with a portion of those this year, but to which ones will be done this year, I don't know exactly yet until we've got some more details of construction and details of design. Certainly we can communicate offline about where some of those locations are, and I'd be happy to do that with you certainly offline, but otherwise I would just suggest to wait until we have stuff returned to council through the RFT award process.
Great, thank you.
Seeing nothing more. Tie Road culvert repair. So next item is the third ice pad selection, space, site selection, and design. Okay. New trails maintenance vehicle. Next item is the artificial turf field equipment. Next is the pool tile regrouting project. Next is the additional funding for WRC field irrigation system. Next is the Aquatic Center Maintenance Program. Next item is the WRC back entrance lane traffic calming improvements. Councillor Hallman.
Thank you, through the mayor. Ms. Jackson, my phone has been exploding this afternoon with joy in this. People have commented how they're thrilled to see this, as a lot of people have commented, from tractors to cars to trucks, that have not enjoyed this and are looking forward to continued traffic calming, but in a less aggressive way. So I just have enjoyed some of the comments that I've received on this, but so the community is in full support of this.
Very good. Councillor Fanning.
Thank you, through the chair. Councillor Hallman has already covered it. I think everybody in the community is going to be pretty delighted.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. In regards to the speed bumps, will they be all the way down Gingrich Road, right to Herb Transport, where they get shaved down a bit? To Miss Jackson.
Oh, would appear Miss Jackson is frozen on us.
So I can jump in from my understanding, or I might hand over to oh, just wait. She might come in and out with her connection, but are you back? Sandy?
Sorry. Yeah, I'm not sure. My internet's kind of fuzzy in way, which is township property, not necessarily the remainder of the road where the other businesses are.
Yeah, so from Ms. Jackson's comments there, which Mr. Molyneux can attest to as well. Yeah, the limits of this project are on the township owned property, which the entranceway to the rec complex. So after what we used to call the dimple, that's where this project will focus, not all the way down any further outside of our property. Is that correct, Mr. Molyneux? Yep.
Yeah, through you, Chair. The section of Gingrich Road that you're referencing, Councillor Fisher, is not part of this project, and that would technically be our own, owned as well by us. It is our section of road, but as Mr. Kelly and Ms. Jackson have pointed out, that this project will be limited to the site only, site entrance only for the rec complex.
And just to follow up, is there any chance of putting the other 3 speed bumps on a list to maybe shave them down a little bit? I still get a number of complaints about how big they are and that people scraping the bottom of their cars as they go home.
Through the chair, Councillor Fisher, are you talking about the ones that are on inside, like our laneway, or
no,
where
Gingrich
the roundabout
Road
is on Gingrich Road? Okay.
Yeah, there's 3 of them kind of right in a row, right around the corner, and so.
Okay, I'm not. Mr. Mullenhouse might have to speak to that one.
Yeah, through you, Chair. I believe the section that you're referencing, Councillor Fisher, is part of the facility itself. It's not actually within Gingrich Road. So there's a section there, a roundabout or a circle, that would be sort of the demarcation point of where our road ends to where the facility entrance starts. So the speed bumps that you're referencing, I believe, as part of this project, would be replaced with a different style of a speed bump or a speed table of sorts. So if there's further clarification there, I believe that point of demarcation that you're referencing, Councillor Fisher, is certainly at that bulb point becomes, and west of that bulb point becomes the private property entrance.
Okay.
That's correct, yes.
One other thing while we're talking rec center, just for Miss Jackson, I was there Friday and there was probably 12 cars in the parking lot, but the entire parking lot was pretty well plowed. Is there any chance of discussing with contractors, maybe plow less just over this time? Like, I think even when we were in the red zone, there was probably still only maybe 20 cars at a time in the rec center parking lot. So I'm just thinking that might be an opportunity for us to save a bit of money, and maybe even like the New Dundee Community Center or St. Agatha Community Center, if we plowed a bit less. Is that a possibility?
Mr. Molyneux, you want to address that?
Sure. Thank you. Through you, Chair. In relation to winter maintenance and parking lot winter maintenance, Council may recall that there was a negotiation that we put forward for approval, contract put forward for approval in, I believe it was October or November of last year to get us through this winter. We did negotiate with one of our vendors to provide reduced service. And we looked at all of our facilities, and certainly the ones that are like the WRC and the ones that you had mentioned there. And we looked at what we could reduce for some of those services, anticipating that we may still be in an orange or a red zone type of an operation, which would mean that it technically would still be open and would require some form of winter maintenance. So we have reduced, generally speaking, we have reduced our maintenance needs or done so through that contract. That contract we haven't brought forward or we haven't returned to it as a sort of an hourly type thing. It's a pay for service, certain level of service type of contract. So we have had further discussions with facility managers, internal facility managers, and we've also had discussions with the contractor further maintenance reductions, but I don't anticipate at this point that we can reduce them any further with winter conditions in the event that we do come out of, we'll say, the restrictions and some of these zones restrictions with unmaintained parking lots. We could be in a more difficult position at the end of that with trying to maintain service. So at this point, I would say we already have looked at some form of a reduced service with those contractors, and we're always looking to, certainly in these conditions, we're certainly looking to do our best to further reduce them as much as we can. But we also have to consider some of the anticipated potential positive future outcomes to those services as well.
Okay, thank you. Next is the Wilmot Recreation Complex Operations Maintenance Plan. Seeing none. New Hamburg Arena and Community Center building repairs. Okay. Remove ammonia from New Hamburg Arena. Administration Complex HVAC Replacement Project. Next is Fire Alarm System Replacement, Admin Castle. Next is the Hayesville Community Center exterior maintenance. Councillor Hallman.
Thank you through the mayor. I have a resident question regarding the welcome to Hayesville, the community center sign at the exterior of the building. Even though I know this is not directly related to that, the resident is watching this evening and wondering what the status is of the replacement of that sign. Thank you.
Thank you. Through Chair Armstrong, that is being proposed through the operating budget as a minor capital item. So it is in the next phase of budget deliberations for your consideration.
Thank you for answering the constituents' question this evening.
Next is the multi-purpose pad at Mannheim Park. Additional funding dog park construction. Councillor Fanning.
Through the chair, I just wanted to note again that the park is getting a lot of use. We were down there and a lot of people were talking about how much they appreciate it and how much it has added for them in their enjoyment of the community and created connections, particularly through this very difficult year that's been such a hard thing to achieve. So thank you.
Next is the playground component addition for the Petersburg Community Park. Next is the playground replacement, St. Agatha. Next is Zenith River Pathway and Bank Erosion Control. Next is the Reforestation Program. Councillor Gordick.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong, to Ms. Jackson, just a clarification with regards to the trees. I know we've asked before, is part of, just more of a clarification of the report. I've asked before about mapping of where trees are going, just as a general guideline, wondering if that project or program has been implemented yet, so that we can, Mr. Mullenhouse is going to answer, because I thought it was him that I had asked before. Just to kind of give a rough idea when people are asking for where we're planting trees, it doesn't have to be detailed, but I have asked for a mapping, and just kind of brought it up for me. Thanks.
Through you, Chair Armstrong, I believe we had provided council a list of locations in years past. I'm thinking in the 2019 or 2020 budget process, following that budget process, I believe we provided council a list of locations. We did reference the need for mapping resources to do some of the township location mapping. And I think that we're not at that point yet where we can sort of rededicate our GIS resources to mapping out tree locations, but that's certainly an item that's is on the list for future when we do get caught up with our core infrastructure and the GIS needs there. But again, we will continue to provide council in the meantime with a location of trees installed. A large majority of our program this past year was in support of the Let's Treat Wilmot initiative and some of the other tree initiatives around the township. We didn't run a standard type process, a standard program, I guess, for reforestation this past year. We did try to reduce the burden on our staffing resource with pandemic management. So yeah, so our program was dedicated this past year to supporting some of those other community initiatives.
Thank you.
Okay. Next is the rolled storage for artifact collection. Councillor Hallman.
Sorry, I was clicking wrong buttons there. So let me just figure out how I can stop doing that. I don't know what I did. I somehow added an X. Sorry about that, everybody. I don't know how to get rid of it. Maybe somebody else can help me with that. Anyway, I don't really mean, hey, thanks. Through the mayor to the director and curator. This is really exciting to see. This grant is really positive. It's just a curiosity question. With this storage, what kind of space will this give us in the municipality to grow our lovely collection? Will this storage unit allow like a 50% growth rate, or a quarter more we can bring in? Just kind of curious what this does for us to keep this lovely collection of our history growing.
Through Mayor Armstrong. So what this will do is it's going to increase our space by over double, which is fantastic for us. And as you notice in the report, it's been about 26 years. It's just like a static shelving. So when you think of the rolled storage, it's going to really allow us to increase. We've been pretty jam-packed in there, and allows us with the two collections to keep growing it and to properly house them too as well. Yeah, we're very excited.
Excellent. Next is the New Hamburg Flood Zone Backwater Valve Program. Thank you, Councillor Fenning, for your silent clapping. Councillor Hallman. Oh, okay. So that is it. So there is a recommendation. Councillor Fanning, you wish to comment?
Sorry, thank you. Through you, Chair Armstrong. Just wanted to, and maybe, you know, maybe there's somebody else out there who is interested in discussing this particular aspect of the program, but the edges of the zones identified, there are some properties where, you know, the line of the flood zone kind of goes through the property. And I was wondering if the director could just clarify how those properties would be treated if this project, when this project rolls out.
Excuse me, through you, Chair Armstrong, to Councillor Fanning. They'd be looked at obviously individually. Generally, some of the properties, it would depend where the actual service connection is. So if the flood zone cuts through a property and the house is in the flood zone, obviously they'd be eligible. The proposal is for 200 properties. So we don't expect 100% uptake. So there would be some decisions that could be made depending on the success of the program. But yeah, basically the goal would be to ensure that as many people as possible can have within the flood zone, protect their property from sanitary sewage backup. In reviewing the maps, we didn't anticipate there would be many properties where it would be doubtful as to whether they're in or out. So definitely some of those curved lines may suggest that, but I think when you zoom in with the dwellings on, it's pretty clear who's in and who's out.
Thank you. So the recommendation is that the 2021 capital budget as prepared by the Director of Corporate Services / Treasurer be endorsed in principle. That is moved by Councillor Gordick, seconded by Councillor Hallman. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So next we have the 10-year capital forecast. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you once again, Chair Armstrong, and obviously thank you to the committee for your support of the 2021 capital program. This report outlines an update to our 10-year capital forecast. Each year we review and update this forecast based on a lot of the master planning processes that drive this municipality forward and align us with the expectations and desires of the community, as well as the needs from each of the operating departments. First of those being the strategic plan, which was approved by council late in 2020. So a number of items from that document have been rolled into the 10-year, not all of them as of the timing of when the strategic plan was approved. So watch for more updates in the coming years on that. Significant piece of the puzzle also is the approval of the fire master plan, which was approved in December of 2020. Several initiatives have been included based on that, most notably provisions for station design and construction in New Hamburg. As noted, fire service apparatus scheduled for replacement over the 10 years will be difficult for us to finance. So fire services will continue to review and adjust their replacement strategy and have started to stage replacement funding requirements to better align with the timing of deliveries. Fire apparatus take quite a significant amount of time to build and deliver. So we're trying to stagger the financing requirements based on that. You'll see that within the program. The Parks and Facilities Recreation Services Master Plan, as you're aware of, we did include the project to look at a third site selection and a location or needs for the Parks and Facilities operating facility. Those came out of that Rec Services Master Plan. Asset management plan, couldn't go without saying the important role that plays within building this 10-year forecast. We continually add to our asset management plan, our asset management capacity within the township, and try to seek alignment between it and this 10-year forecast, ultimately where they'll be completely aligned. So those efforts are ongoing. specifically looking now at risk and criticality modeling and life cycle strategies, which you saw with some of the projects noted in 2021. A large portion of our capital financing for the forecast comes from the development charges regime, I'll say, approximately 18.9 million, so $19 million over the 10-year horizon are funded through DCs. This is a challenge given the fact that a lot of the growth-related capital needs happen ahead of the actual growth coming in, which builds a deficit within the DC. We'll be looking in this current year at a update to the DC study to include some of the impacts of the fire master plan, some public works needs, and then looking at a debt management strategy so that growth is continuing to pay for growth, and any debt required to do so is funded by growth to cover off any debt requirements. Just go through some quick other updates. The ISIP COVID-19 resilience stream was added, $224,000 that we are to receive, and that's being put directly towards HVAC improvements within the administration complex. So good forethought by Director of Parks Facilities to use that opportunity to get some critical upgrades done within this building that we're in right now. Or sorry, that the mayor and I are in right now, everybody else is at home. But and then other senior government funding initiatives. We talked about the Snyder's Road reconstruction. This is a major capital project that we had applied for funding under the ISIP Green infrastructure stream for. We've still yet to hear whether we'll receive funding towards it. So we updated the forecast to indicate the potential that we'll have to fund that internally. That, along with a number of other significant underground infrastructure pieces, are going to require us to look at debt on that side in the absence of any senior government funding. So this underscores how we keep advocating and pushing for the need for stable, reliable, and predictable funding for this critical infrastructure. Other than that, the forecast is color-coded as it has been previously. And every department is here to attend to any questions you may have on the forecast as a whole. Thank you.
All right, so any comments or questions? If you have, we'll in turn let you go through all your comments and questions. Each in turn. And Mr. Kelly's right that we're not doing your HVAC at home. Councillor Fenning.
Thank you, through the chair. Yeah, my HVAC, that'd be interesting. I just, for me, these budget cycles, these are fairly similar numbers and reforecast, and it doesn't always show the amount of work that, or it's not always obvious to the outside how much work goes into creating all of this. And I want to thank everyone for their hard work on this. I know it's been a little extra stressful this cycle. And talking about having to take on debt, I think it's one of the things that I keep harping on, that our infrastructure, we haven't adequately funded that, and as Mr. Kelly mentioned, stable funding from the levels of government that have the deeper pockets and the ability to actually tax to a level that allows for sufficient funds to replace, repair, upgrade infrastructure. It's really important, and I thank staff for continuing to advocate for the community on that front. And thank you for all your work.
Councillor Hallman.
Thank you, through the mayor. I echo Councillor Fanning's comments. Thank you for making this really easy, really organized, and all the layers of work that go into the back end of that to make this time that we're all together. smooth as it is greatly appreciated and valued. And I do like the color coding of the 10-year capital. It makes that process so much easier when I'm going back and comparing from the previous years to this year. It's really helpful. I do have one comment for Mr. Mullen here that comes from a New Dundee resident. If he can comment that the 10-year capital, it does not comment on the retaining walls that were brought forward by New Dundee residents in the past. Can you just comment on that in the 10-year capital, please?
Through you, Mayor, Chair Armstrong. I believe this was an item that did come up for discussion in last year's budget process. We typically in a year, we would look to include any sort of reviews of retaining walls or structures of that sort with our transportation structures that we have to review. So our OSIMs, basically, we would look to evaluate some of our, we'll call them retaining structures. One of the bigger things for retaining walls is an ownership piece. So before we put anything into the capital budget, we need to be very clear whether or not, first of all, that we would own it and it would be our responsibility. And second of all, we would need to see the condition and make sure that it is a priority from a hazard perspective to address, so that if it's a roadway hazard or a safety hazard for the roadway, we would consider that to be more of a priority item. As you can see from our structures budget and our planning for structures budget, we have, again, a significant backlog of structures that certainly need to have some repairs and replacements done. And while certainly we do hear the concern about retaining walls and hear some of the residents' concerns about retaining walls, we also try to put them into the budget where we can fit them. And if they're a priority from a safety perspective or a hazard perspective, they would certainly be there sooner than later. But again, we need to confirm that through our basic OSIM process, and then we need to confirm ownership of it as well. So those are some of two of the bigger pieces that need to be confirmed and need to be part of the discussion before we would add structures to our 10-year capital related to retaining walls.
Okay, thank you for the detailed answer.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. I was wondering, Mr. Kelly, if you could just give us an overview how we would reshape the 10-year capital, like as an example, inserting the fire hall, the New Hamburg Fire Hall. What would be the process to go forward with that?
Thank you, Councillor Fisher. Great question through you, Chair Armstrong. Yep. So when we review and bring new projects into the capital forecast, we obviously look, our main goal is to keep, our main target is to keep the amount of funding towards current year capital to a reasonable amount. As far as levy funding, you'll see that we stage that for a modest inflationary growth every year. That's your bottom line piece. This year's the exception of that because we've reduced the levy funding towards capital to offset some of the operating pressures from COVID-19. When we bring a new project in, we obviously first look at all funding sources available outside of levy funds to do so. So for a project such as the New Hamburg Fire Station, which is significant capital coming in, we do recognize that a large component of the need for that facility will be growth related, hence the update of our development charges background study. So we'll garner some funding from DCs or the growth community to cover that cost. Then we would look at staggering the timing of other initiatives, prioritizing of initiatives within the service area itself first, so the fire service area, so that bringing in the fire hall doesn't displace other critical projects from other departments. And then essentially the time frame based on the master plan that dictates kind of the process as to when that need exists. We drop it into the forecast and move around funding, preferably far out so we can prepare better for it. And then the last piece just being support from you as council. And I say this every meeting, when we're putting money into the infrastructure reserve funds, there's a reason for it. It's because projects that we already are aware of for replacements, and then new projects that come in are going to require resources of our own to get there. And then at the end of it, if we don't have the funding there, we're going to have to issue debentures and debt to make sure the projects happen in a timely manner. I hope that covers what goes on in this mind and in the minds of the group to fit in big initiatives such as that, but that's the process we go through.
Councillor Gordick.
Thank you, through Chair. Maybe this goes to Ms. Jackson, I'm not sure. Just going back to this where it's the paragraph states annual requirements shift to operating budget. While I was reading that, it just brought up to mind is I've had a resident with regards to no longer functioning cemetery plans that we now have taken over. Wondering if that is something that we could be doing as an annual inspection, because we've had people call with regards to what they perceive as dangerous situations with tombstones being broken, etc. Is there a inspection? And that's what came to mind. It's not necessarily part of the capital, but it's just part of an annual inspection. I'm wondering if we do something like that. Perhaps Ms. Amber could call for that as well, if she's still here. Just sort of following up on that with regards to that.
Through the chair, I can actually answer that for you. We do have some minor capital money in last year's budget that we didn't have an opportunity to spend to take a look at some of that work, but abandoned cemeteries are definitely something that I'd like to spend a little more time on identifying the locations and getting a little more familiar with the locations and what our responsibilities are. It's possible Mr. Dubrick might be able to add something to that as well. And I see Patrick with his hand up.
Yeah, I'll just speak quickly regarding the dollar funding amount. We do carry a small budget item annually, close to $5,000, I believe, as a operating provision for works on abandoned cemeteries. So there is a funding allocation in place. We wouldn't have to establish new funding. I think to Ms. Jackson's point, it's more of when resources are available to do so, doing that review and seeing where that money can be used most effectively. But I don't know if Mr. Dubrick did have anything else to add.
So can I just ask a quick follow-up before Mr. Dubrick speaks? I guess my question would be, is that how do we know? Because not always are we aware. So as we do inspections for others, is that going to be something going forward that Ms. Jackson would be thinking of? Is that we might be going into let's go and take a look, do a quick inspection, make sure there isn't any broken headstones, say tombstones, sorry guys, headstones, so that nobody could trip or hurt themselves going to the abandoned cemeteries.
Through the chair, yes, that would definitely be the intent, is to do inspections and identify any stones that require repair, etc. So that would definitely be the intent of that.
Did you wish to comment, Mr. Dubrick?
In the past, when we're cutting the abandoned cemeteries is usually when we do our inspections. So moving forward, if we wanted to inspect more throughout the year, that would have to be done more so with some budgetary resources.
Ms. Locke.
I could just add to the conversation. Heritage Wilmot used to do an assessment of all the abandoned cemeteries. And so there's information that, Sandy, this would be before you, on that your department would have on some of the work that we established on an annual maintenance on, you're right, identifying some stones or things like that, so you know what you need to do and remain proactive on it. But there's a program, and if the Heritage Committee can assist in any way, absolutely.
Sounds good. There are no other comments or questions on the 10-year capital. Okay, I want to congratulate staff on the good work that they're doing. A lot of hard work, and we certainly do appreciate all that. And so there is a recommendation to go with this, and that the 10-year capital forecast as prepared by the Director of Corporate Services / Treasurer be endorsed in principle. That is moved by Councillor Fisher, Councillor Fenning, all in favor. That is carried. Thank you very much. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes our evening here anyway. So we need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Gordick, Councillor Gerber, all in favor. Only one hand, please. Oh. That's it, folks. We are finished.
Thank you, everybody.